The movie follows the story of a man named Samson, who walks into a nightclub known to be a hub for child trafficking. Samson, a former Special Forces operative turned vigilante, is driven by a personal vendetta against the trafficking ring that has deeply affected his life. His mission is to bring justice to the victims and dismantle the network from within. That night, Samson is there to negotiate the sale of a young boy named Victor with a dangerous human trafficking ring. He offers a high price, and the leader of the cartel seems pleased, smiling as he listens to Samson's offer. As Samson places a stack of cash on the table, he suddenly pulls out a knife and attacks the traffickers around him. A brutal fight breaks out between Samson and the syndicate members. Despite being outnumbered, Samson manages to defeat each criminal with ease. His background as a former Special Forces operative and top police officer gives him unmatched fighting skills. At one point, he uses a swift roundhouse kick to disarm an attacker, followed by a precise elbow strike that knocks another out cold, showcasing his relentless precision and combat prowess. After bringing down all the cartel members, Samson heads to a back room to find Victor and rescue him. He gently tells Victor that he's been sent by his mother to bring him home safely. Samson then takes Victor to the basement of the club, where they hop onto a motorbike and speed away. Before they leave, Samson activates a remote timer, triggering bombs he had secretly planted all around the building and in the cars outside. Just moments after Samson and Victor escape, the nightclub erupts in a series of powerful explosions, destroying the place and killing everyone inside. But in his haste, Samson overlooked a crucial detail: the other children still trapped inside the building. They too are caught in the blast and fire. The next morning, Samson wakes up to a phone call from the police, asking him to come to the scene of the now-burned nightclub. When he arrives, he is met by Inspector Steve, a lead investigator who is furious with Samson's reckless actions. Steve informs him that several children, who were held captive by the traffickers, lost their lives due to the fire and carbon monoxide poisoning caused by the explosions. Even though Samson's intention was to save Victor, his impulsive decision led to tragic consequences. Inspector Steve reminds Samson of his past as a former Special Forces member, now working independently for secret assignments. He criticizes Samson for causing more harm than good, urging him to step away from these dangerous individual missions and stop interfering with police operations. The scene then shifts to 6 months later. Samson has now changed his life completely, working as a butcher and living like any other person. Every morning, he wakes up before dawn, heads to the market to select the freshest cuts, and spends his days meticulously preparing meat for customers. This routine, mundane and repetitive, contrasts sharply with his past life of high-stakes missions and adrenaline-fueled encounters. But even though his life seems ordinary, he's haunted by memories of his past. The mistakes he made 6 months ago still torment him, and he often sees visions of the children who died in the fire he caused. Meanwhile, an American family arrives in Moldova for a vacation. The family includes Fade-In, his wife Monica, and their teenage daughter Becky. They land at the international airport, looking happy and ready for their trip. Becky seems especially excited, eager to explore and make the most of their time in Moldova. Fade-In, a professional MMA fighter, has plans to participate in a fight in one of Moldova's cities during their stay. As Fade-In is taking a picture of his smiling daughter, he doesn't notice a woman named Amelia quietly snapping photos of Becky from a distance. The family reaches their hotel, and Becky asks her dad if she can go out to the balcony to try to get a better signal for her phone. Fade-In agrees, too busy watching MMA fights on TV to pay much attention. While Becky is on the balcony, she spots Amelia standing on the neighboring balcony. Amelia casually mentions that the signal is stronger down in the lobby, making it sound like friendly advice. A short while later, Fade-In calls out for Becky but gets no response. When he checks the balcony, he finds it empty, with only Becky's laptop sitting on the table. Worried, he dials her cell phone, but there's no answer. Monica, who was in the bathroom, doesn't know where Becky went either. Fade-In's worry quickly turns into panic as he searches the hotel, but there's no sign of his daughter. He immediately informs the hotel manager, and they check the CCTV cameras, but no helpful clues appear. Fade-In then reaches out to the media, and soon, news of Becky's disappearance spreads everywhere. Given Fade-In's fame as a well-known MMA fighter, The Moldovan police quickly start a full-scale search to find Becky. Samson, who was taking a break from his work at the butcher shop, sees Becky's disappearance on the news. Just then, Faden and Monica arrive at his shop, desperate for help. They explain that someone at the American embassy advised them to seek out Samson. Samson tries to tell them that he's just a regular guy now and can't offer any assistance. But Monica, with her experience in the police force, notices a unique tattoo on Samson's neck. She recognizes that it's a mark from a special police division, revealing that Samson isn't as ordinary as he claims. Faden and Monica continue pleading with him, even offering a large amount of money for his help in finding their daughter. Despite their pleas, Samson turns them down, still trapped by the guilt and trauma of his past mistakes. As Samson was closing up his shop for the night, ready to head home, he was surprised to see his son, Selwyn, waiting for him. Samson soon learned that it was Selwyn who had suggested to Becky's parents to seek his help. Selwyn pleaded with his father to assist Becky's parents in finding their missing 14-year-old daughter. He explained that the police's hands were tied because the criminal syndicate responsible for the kidnapping was being protected by powerful people. But despite Selwyn's earnest request, Samson still refused to get involved. Meanwhile, Faden refused to give up on his search for Becky. He roamed the streets near the nightclub, asking anyone he could find if they had seen his daughter. Desperate, he entered a bar and showed Becky's picture to the patrons, hoping for any clue about her whereabouts. Instead of helping, some men at the bar mocked Faden, taunting him for being a bad father who couldn't keep his daughter safe. Their cruel words ignited Faden's anger, and he lashed out, starting a fight. But he was outnumbered, and the men quickly overpowered him, beating him badly. Just when things looked bleak for Faden, a mysterious figure in a black mask suddenly appeared. The masked man swiftly took down all of Faden's attackers, rescuing him from the brawl. To Faden's surprise, the man behind the mask was none other than Samson, who had been secretly following Faden. Samson then brought Faden back to his butcher shop to tend to his injuries. At the shop, Samson finally agreed to help Faden find Becky, but on one condition. Samson would work alone, without interference from anyone. Faden, desperate to find his daughter, agreed to Samson's terms. The next night, Samson set his plan in motion. He went to the residence of a businessman named Lucas. Disguising himself as a courier, Samson tricked the gate guard into letting him approach and quickly neutralized him. Using a decoy car that drove itself, he distracted the other guards, drawing them away from their posts. With precise movements, Samson slipped into the building unnoticed and reached the security control room, gaining access to Lucas's private office. Once inside Lucas's room, Samson wasted no time. He captured Lucas and demanded to know where Becky was. Lucas claimed he had no idea about Becky's disappearance. Samson, however, wasn't convinced. He threatened Lucas, warning him to find out everything he could about Becky's whereabouts or face the consequences. He made it clear that if Lucas turned out to be behind the kidnapping, he would come back to end him. As it turned out, Samson's instincts were spot on. Lucas was indeed the mastermind behind Becky's kidnapping. After Samson left, Lucas contacted his henchman, Flat, and ordered him to get rid of Becky. Following Lucas's command, Flat shot Amelia and her partner to eliminate any witnesses and then threatened Becky, dousing her with gasoline in a menacing act to silence her. The following day, the police discovered a burned body they believed to be Becky's. They found a bracelet on the body's left arm, which matched the one Becky used to wear. But when Samson saw the condition of the body, he wasn't convinced it was really Becky. He asked the police to perform a DNA test to be sure. Later, Samson, Faden, and Monica went to the hospital to wait for the DNA test results. When the forensic doctor finally delivered the news that the body was indeed Becky's, Monica broke down in tears, crying uncontrollably. Overcome with grief and anger, she blamed Samson for what happened and slapped him, believing that his reckless actions had led to this tragedy. The next morning, Faden and Monica prepared to return to America, heartbroken over their loss. Meanwhile, Samson drowned his sorrow in alcohol, drinking heavily until he was completely drunk. While he was in this vulnerable state, Lucas and his men showed up at Samson's butcher shop, seeking revenge for what Samson had done earlier. Samson, still a bit drunk, struggled to defend himself as Lucas's men lashed his back with iron chains. But despite the pain, Samson managed to pull himself together and fought back against the attackers. A fierce shootout erupted between Samson and Lucas's men, but in the end, Samson stood his ground and survived. In the middle of the fight, Samson had a sudden realization. He remembered that Becky always wore her bracelet on her right hand, not her left. This small but crucial detail made him believe that the body the police found might not be Becky's after all. Wasting no time, Samson rushed to the international airport to catch Fade-In and Monica before they left. He found them just in time and urgently explained his suspicion that Becky might still be alive. Samson pointed out the difference in the bracelet's position and suggested that the forensic doctor might have been bribed to give false DNA results. Together, Samson, Fade-In, and Monica headed back to the hospital to confront the forensic doctor. They cornered him and forced him to reveal the truth. Under pressure, the doctor confessed that he had been paid to falsify the DNA results by a man named Stelu, who was the deputy defense minister of Moldova. Stelu was deeply involved in human trafficking and had a history of kidnapping American girls to satisfy his own twisted desires. Realizing that his secret was exposed, Stelu quickly learned from the doctor that Fade-In, Monica, and Samson were closing in on him. He wasted no time in giving orders to his henchman, Vlad, to deal with Becky's parents and eliminate any threat to his operation. Samson took Fade-In and Monica to a hidden safe house to protect them from Stella's men. Once there, Samson began preparing the weapons he had stored earlier, knowing they might soon need them. Meanwhile, Becky was being held prisoner in a remote location, far from the city. When the guards around her let their guard down, Becky quickly grabbed her cell phone and managed to call her father. Fade-In and Monica were able to trace the call and track down Becky's location through the phone signal. But what they didn't know was that this was all part of the kidnappers' plan to lure them into a trap. Fade-In and Monica immediately contacted Samson, asking him to join them on their way to Kyornea prison, where they believed Becky was being held. Samson tried to stop them, worried that they were walking right into a trap set by the kidnappers. But Fade-In and Monica were determined to save their daughter, so they pressed on. When they reached the prison, they began looking for a way to sneak inside, knowing the place was heavily guarded by armed men. After quietly taking down the gatekeeper, they slipped into the compound. Moving carefully, Fade-In and Monica followed one of the guards from a distance, watching as he seemed to lead their daughter away. But once again, it was a setup. The guards' actions were meant to draw Fade-In and Monica into the open. Just when it seemed like Fade-In and Monica were about to be caught, Samson appeared, arriving just in time to save them from being shot. He quickly took down the guards, threatening them. With a key they found on one of the guards, they entered the building, hoping to find Becky. When they saw a girl who looked like Becky, they rushed over. But to their disappointment, it wasn't her. It was another captive girl who had been taken by the criminal gang. Without hesitation, they freed the girl and decided to keep searching for Becky. As they continued their search, they ran into a group of heavily armed guards. Samson acted quickly, throwing a smoke grenade to blur the guards' vision. In the confusion, he efficiently took them down with precise shots. Watching Samson's actions on his monitor, Flat, the henchman in charge, ordered more of his men to block their way. A fierce shootout broke out between Flat's forces and Samson's group, with Samson's side ultimately gaining the upper hand. Seeing his men fall one by one, Flat decided to change his strategy. He ordered his men to retreat and then reached out to Fade-In, offering a deal. He proposed to trade Becky for the girl they had just rescued. Flat's voice was cold as he threatened to kill Becky if Fade-In didn't agree to the exchange, leaving them with no choice but to accept the deal. Samson, suspecting that this exchange was another trap, came up with a plan. He decided to monitor the exchange from a distance, using the opportunity to track down the exact location of Flat's hidden sniper and any other mercenaries that might be lying in wait. During the exchange, Flat wasted no time giving the order for his men to kill Becky's parents. But Samson was ready. He had already taken out 2 of Flat's snipers, which threw off the attacker's plan and protected Fade-In and Monica. Just then, the police arrived on the scene, surrounding the entire area to cut off any escape routes. Meanwhile, the girl who had been swapped for Becky turned out to be much braver than expected. Thanks to Samson, who had secretly given her a gun for protection. She took a chance and fired it flat, hitting him directly in the head and ending his threat once and for all. With Flat gone, the police moved in quickly, and all the American girls who had been held captive by Flat's gang were finally rescued and brought to safety. The following day, Samson and his son, Selwyn, drove Faden, Monica, and Becky to Moldova's international airport, ready to see them safely back to America. The family, though exhausted and still shaken, were deeply grateful for Samson's help. The film closes with a powerful scene of Stelu, the mastermind behind the trafficking ring, kneeling in a church, seemingly praying in repentance for his sins. As he begins his confession, seeking forgiveness, Samson suddenly appears from the shadows. Without a moment's hesitation, Samson raises his gun and shoots Stelu, killing him instantly. His final words echo through the quiet church. God might forgive you, but I cannot. So the moral of the story is, if you ever go undercover, don't forget which wrist your bracelet goes on. It could literally save your life. And remember, even in the midst of explosions and shootouts, sometimes a butcher with a mysterious past is all you really need.